About time you earn your paycheck. What's up, man? Saturday morning.
Yeah, well, Saturday afternoon.
Oh, afternoon. Yeah. Saturday afternoon. Welcome to Unpopular Celebrities, everybody.
Yeah.
We right back in here again. Let me hit this button right here. There we go. Right back in here again for another day.
Yeah. Try to help them out again and do this on Saturday, because, big football tomorrow and stuff. I know y'all
big football today, man. College football today.
No, I'm talking about NFL.
And we got Paul Mendoza from Modesto, California. Sensei, and I'm going to call him Sensei throughout this whole thing. Sensei means teacher in Japanese, if you don't know.
I know what it means. I've been in Japan.
No, you didn't know that, though. You didn't know that, though.
3.5 years.
Just say I taught you something new today.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So, Sensei,
thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. That's what I do. Sensei, go ahead and introduce yourself. Let the people know who you are.
Okay, I'm Paul Mendoza. I'm a 5th degree master black belt in Shotokan karate, 3rd degree black belt in Gracie Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Started Muay Thai when I was 18, stick fighting when I was 15, proficient with bladed weapons for about 20 years, former defensive tactics instructor, MMA coach, cornerman, cornered over 250 fights, experienced in boxing, you name it. Thumb wrestling, how you want to get down? I can do it.
Thumb wrestling.
So Mike, if you don't know, I brought him on just in case
you
want to fuck with me one more time.
Watch him out. First of all, watch him out. But what the man just explained was everything he was good at, not you.
Talk a lot about leadership on this show and everything like that. So we want to tap in pretty much a non-military side of leadership because never been in the military. Am I correct?
That's right.
Yeah, never been in the military. Yeah, but we want to tap into the leadership side. So I really want to take it from the ground up. You get a lot of students on a day-to-day basis. When you get a lot of students, what's the first thing you do with them? Because I know they all have different aspirations, and I know time has changed from now until then, but we have different aspirations when they come to see you. So what's your mindset when a new student comes in?
Well, I mean, if we take a look at that, obviously there's different martial arts. And, if we're talking about, teaching children to teaching adults and teaching maybe some that's a little older. If we just kind of look at the MMA part, when a person comes in and which happens a lot, the first time I started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was 1995. And Jiu-Jitsu was so new. MMA, UFC was just a baby. And I wasn't really into grappling. I didn't really like grappling. Didn't like wrestling. I was started boxing when I was 6 years old, started Kempo at 8, karate at 12. So I was always a stand-up fighter. And MMA was this new thing, jiu-jitsu was this new thing. And so I started learning jiu-jitsu from videotapes. And so it was just something I had to do. I was never good at it. Well, good thing I did because I didn't realize how big the sport was going to get. So I started jiu-jitsu in 1995. Then I started formally with my teacher, Ralph Gracie, but it's pronounced Health. In Portuguese, Brazilian Portuguese, all the R's are H's. Health, Royce, Hickson. Mm-hmm. So I started, training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and MMA. My first fighter I ever put in a fight was 1999. So since then, I've probably cornered over 250 fights. Few in the UFC. I think I've cornered 4 in the UFC, Bellator, you name it. And so I do have a lot of young men coming in here and want to be MMA fighters. So right now, honestly, when a kid comes in and tells me they want to be in the UFC, especially in California, Northern California in particular, you might as well tell me you want to be an astronaut. Because actually it's probably easier to be an astronaut.
Right.
It's very similar to a young man, for a lot of years, Dominic thought he was going to be an NBA player.
Yeah, that's right.
We know what happened.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
We know what happened.
Actually, I think one day he came in and was quit. He actually came in and told me he was quitting karate because he was going to be an NBA player.
That's right.
I'm glad you stuck with it.
I was back 2 weeks later.
Yeah. More like 2 hours later.
So, there's a lot of factors that go into a fighter. Obviously, the physical part of it, but really the mental part of it, I look for the first. So, I look for a couple things. Number one, they come in, their work ethic. What are they willing to do to make it? There's a couple questions I ask them, about their sports history. if they've had, wrestling or some kind of martial art background, it makes it easier. But people like water polo. Water polo is basically MMA in the water. They're drowning each other. So, water polo, soccer has been a great feeder, the endurance. Football, not as well. Believe it or not, I've never had great success with football players. And the reason why, a couple reasons. Number one, plays are 30 seconds. So their cardio a lot of times is not that great, and two, sometimes football players don't have the heart as, let's say, a rugby player or even a soccer player, and the reason why is because, or a wrestler. Wrestler is a good example because football is team sports. A lot of times you have 11 guys to back you up. You have a particular job you have to do. And we're wrestling. Basketball is another great feeder because they're running up and down the court, great cardio, and they're, soccer, like I said. So football, I haven't been great success taking football players, crossing them over. But yeah, so there's a lot of factors when they come in. Usually, I need to know their mental capacity for taking orders and finding direction.
Okay. So I got a question. What started you? I mean, obviously you had to be a follower before you became a leader, a student before you became a teacher. So what started you? What made you think, hey, I want to go into this world of, martial arts?
Growing up in Vallejo when I was a kid, I'm originally from Oakland, California. I moved to Vallejo when I was a kid. I lived across the street from a Boys and Girls Club. And one day I was walking by with my mom and I heard the speed bag and I heard blah, 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 blah. And I walked into this Boys and Girls Club and the smell of the leather and the sweat and, it was just exciting. So my mom started me at boxing when I was 6 years old. And then right after that, we went to the drive-in and we watched the Bruce Lee movie. And then after that, I was like, that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
So we moved to Modesto, and I was very, troubled kid. I was dyslexic. I had a stuttering problem. I didn't know my left or right until I was 12 years old. If everybody was on book number 6, I'm on book number 2. I was in resource classes from the time I was 8 years old all the way to high school. Back in the 70s, they just thought I was crazy, so they tried to pump me full of Ritalin. And that later on turned into, kids used to make fun of me for not being able to read and write. And so that turned into me being a bully. I realized that if I just beat them up, they're not gonna make fun of me. The best I can be for somebody else.
Right.
Making myself great is one thing, but making somebody else great is something different.
Absolutely.
So since then, my journey's just been, taking people and taking sparks and smolders and turning them into fires.
Yeah.
And in the process, I've won 4 world titles myself. But that's not the important thing. The important thing is not what I did; it's what I can do for somebody else.
Right.
And so that's, if you go and look at all the greatest speakers who ever lived, whether they were great people or bad people, they always had one thing: they spoke with conviction. And that belief in what you say reaches people. And when they believe that I believe what I'm saying, then they're ready to go through fire, for your coach, your commander, your chief, whoever, your sensei. We will run through fire for them, and then all becomes because of words of conviction.
Man, I'm glad he said that. That's totally transparent to where we at and what we do 100%.
Yeah.
So we had a question for you,
Sure.
Chief Counsel out there. He said, what was the most difficult lesson you had to teach your students?
Ooh, that's a very great question. And I, the answer I always will say is tolerance.
Take me to the I think a lot of our viewers want to know. Take us through a UFC locker room in the background, what we don't get to see. Since you a lot of people, what goes on when the cameras aren't on? They're hitting the mitts and they look all flashy and everything. What goes on maybe a couple hours before the fight and a couple minutes before the fight?
Well, the UFC has done such a great job, of building the sport so quickly. If you look at boxing is such in a bad way right now. It's so sad. I'm a huge boxing fan, but what UFC did UFC is becoming, you know, this this giant, because what UFC does, they try to build a sport where boxing tries to build a fighter. And you know, and so you know, and you know, and you know, I'm a Floyd Mayweather fan, but he in one sense he really held boxing hostage. You know, that's the reason why boxing is the way it is right now. But in the UFC, when you become champion, your head's on a chopping block right away. So, you know, the first time I was in the UFC with one of my fighters, Dana White comes in and he's having a meeting with the fighters, and he says, give these fans what they want. If you want, and they don't want to see you go out there and lay down. If you go watch the early UFCs, all these jiu-jitsu guys be out there laying on the back, and you know, now, you know, they barely go to the ground now. You know, and so what happens is, you know, as soon as you arrive Monday, depending on where it's at, so let's say it's in Vegas and you're here in the United States, you get there a week early, and then you know, they come pick you up at the airport, and before you even go anywhere to your room, they take you and they weigh you in, because they need to know how far off your weight. So an example, if you have a fighter like this, what did we have? We had a big fight last weekend. Yeah. You know, Usman and Covington, they fought, I think, what 170?
Yes,
or 185. Okay, well, when they showed up in Vegas that Monday before they fight, they weighed probably 190. You know, and so they come in and the UFC checks their weight.